Yeah, and rumor has it Windows will end up like Mac. So I wish that were true. If it were able to be as stable as a Mac, that'd be amazing. But the problem with Windows is people use it because it's what they know, and the compatibility and the vendor lock-in they have with like Adobe, Office. Think of all the tools they have to change to really make it stable. Like you look at how its kernel's designed and how ancient it is. Oh, I do have Rust on here. It's just they can't ever do anything with it, so they just have to maintain this ancient kernel, and then just pray things don't break with every update. And that's kind of what Microsoft will continue doing, because if they do try to improve it and let's say make a better product in Windows and make it more stable and let's say clean up the kernel and make it more universal for everyone, well, I mean, why would people use it? that actually all these programs now would work in everything else, Mac and Linux, because they can. It'd be pretty easy to port them at that point. So then there's no more vendor lock in, and well, why would you use something less stable? And they're gonna have to learn this new Mac aesthetic in Windows. I mean, they'll just use Mac or move to a Linux alternative. I just don't see that happening. So for better or worse, we're just kind of stuck with the mediocrity of Microsoft. Like there's no business incentive for them to do better. Sadly, I wish there were. WSL is really cool. Totally agree with that. I love WSL. I mean, a lot of people in the Linux community like feel threatened by WSL, and it's like no, WSL is just really nice. So like if I'm trying to reference something or I need to check something, it's so much easier just to pull up WSL and do a quick check of it. But it's not something like you live in, and it's not a true replacement for a Linux box. Like any dev out there, they might test something in WSL to start with, but inevitably they're going to need a full blown Linux server to test whatever it is they're doing on. And if you're really wanting to do it and you can do everything in Linux, well, most people would prefer the Linux approach than to be in Windows. So hey, there's that. So I'm not threatened at all by WSL, and I think it's a great step forward. You think Microsoft will be Linux? Nah, I don't ever see that happening, Michael. It's like one of those things. It's just, yeah, I just don't ever. Like I said, they'd give up too much by taking, like, if Microsoft really wanted to make the best product, like let's take sales, marketing, vendor lock-in, all the stuff I've talked about, take it all off the table. Now let's envision a world where Microsoft goes, you know what? Instead of spending millions of dollars upkeeping the old, Windows kernel, the Windows, I mean, I think it's even reminiscences of NT are still in there, that old ass kernel that we spend millions of dollars upkeeping with a huge amount of staff, let's just use the Linux kernel, because they could do that and they could just tack everything on top of it. Or they could even use BSD. The thing is, I just don't ever see them do it, because as soon as they do it, everything changes. All the applications have to change. Everything becomes a Unix type structure, and then they lose all of their vendor lock in. So, yes, they save a bunch on overhead, and it becomes more stable, and it becomes a better product, but they lose the vendor lock in, and the business side comes out. It would be an amazing thing. I would love it if they chose. I don't think they'd ever choose Linux because of the GPL and GPL 3, and a lot of the modern licensing is pretty restrictive for big companies. I could see them doing like a BSD variant, kind of like how Sony does with PlayStation and steals. No, they don't steal from BSD. They use a BSD license, and it's just a much more freeing experience for a big company. So I could see them doing more of a BSD situation. Um, if money was no object and they only cared about the quality of their product. This is Microsoft. Quality ain't their forte, man.